Welcome to Lunch Money. Coming up, is it worth trying to get paid to use less energy? Gold hits a record high, and stick around to find out why maturity is the watchword for investors in 2024. Hello, I'm Simon Lambert. Joining me on today's Lunch Money is This Is Money's Lee Boyce and Richard Hunter from the show sponsor Interactive Investor. Lee, the nights have well and truly drawn in, but across the country, people are being urged to turn their lights off, sit in the dark, and not cook their dinner. What is going on? Why do we want people to sit in the dark this year?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question, Simon. And the reason why is quite simple. To put less pressure on the grid, to prevent blackouts, potential blackouts. And the idea is between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m, people are being encouraged to use less energy in that time and will get money back in the form of credit on their energy bill. So if you think about our habits, you know, kids coming home from school, TV goes on, lights go on, heating goes on, everything's going on. And then we get home from work and all that kind of thing. We put a lot of strain on the grid at that time of day. So the idea is suppliers will give you credit back by shifting your habits. Perhaps you make your dinner a little bit later. Perhaps you don't put the lights on as much. All of that kind of mentality. So flipping that around, why would people want to do that? Well, people do quite like to get gamified in terms of sort of their finances and think, do you know what, this is a bit of a challenge. Maybe I could shift this to here and this to here and get a couple of quid back. And I think a lot of people have kind of gone down that route. It was quite popular last year when it launched. And it's carried on being popular this year. We've just had a couple of these going live in the last couple of weeks.
So it's called the Demand Flexibility Service. You'd think they could have come up with a catchier name than that, couldn't you? You know, switch off to help out or something like that.
Exactly, yeah.
But you don't just save the money that you save on saving the energy. You get paid some extra money as well.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, people went on a bit of an energy saving spree last year when bills were spiking and it was very much in the news. Mm-hmm. Bills have come down a bit, but they're still high this year. So there's presumably the incentive for them to save energy anyway.
Yep.
But are they getting paid enough to really encourage them to do this?
Well, that's a really good question. Actually, I think crucially we've got to remember that this winter we don't have as much government help in the form of the help that we had last year. So for lots of people, they might be facing energy bills just as high as last year, potentially even higher, despite a far lower price cap. And I think for that reason, people have got more involved in these kinds of schemes. So actually last year, I think interestingly, 1.6 million households and small businesses got involved with the Demand Flexibility Service, which I think is really interesting in itself, the fact that people are willing to get involved and do it. And actually, you're right, the savings that people are making aren't absolutely huge. So we had some figures, we asked the energy suppliers from last year what the kind of typical saving was. So Octopus said £41, for example, and British Gas said £30. So we're not talking about huge sums of money here, but I feel like people, they feel like they're doing their part by helping prevent potential blackouts, for one, and they're getting paid to do so by shifting that energy, as you say, and getting the credits back for doing that. And it might not be the biggest amount of money ever, but it's that twofold thing for me. I feel that people feel like they're getting a little something and they're helping out in some way.
And presumably also, whilst it's only a small amount of money for individual people, once you add all of those people together, it's actually quite a lot less power being used. So can everybody do this, or can only some people do this?
Only some people could do this. So you have to have a smart meter. I mean, that's the number one condition. And we know, some people love their smart meters, some people absolutely despise the thought of having a smart meter. So number one, you have to have a smart meter. Most of the major providers are signed up to this service, so you should find out from your supplier what their sort of rules are and what dates that they're doing this. And basically, I've always been a bit of a smart meter cynic, but I think that this is one thing where I think this is actually a useful, I sometimes think, what is actually the use of smart meters? Yeah, you can track your energy use and that's more important than ever. I think this is actually another step that makes me think, this is actually something that's quite useful if it's helping prevent blackouts and strain on the grid and getting people some money back in their pocket.
Well, I will look forward to dinner at 11 p.m. at your house. Thank you very much, Lee. Richard, in a moment, you're going to tell us why your word for investors in 2024 is maturity. But first, we've seen a late 2023 surge in the gold price. What's happened?
Yeah, that's right. Gold's up somewhere around 11 or 12% in the year to date, but about 5% of that has come in the last month. Obviously, gold is a traditionally one of those traditional haven assets which investors tend to get drawn towards when there's kind of uncertainty around. And quite apart from the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we've now got the addition of the Israel conflict as well, of course, and that has been partly responsible for the rise in the price. Of late, what we've also seen is that the expectations are very much that interest rates have peaked in the United States. That has meant a slightly weaker US dollar, and the gold price moves inversely to the dollar price. So that's another reason for some upward pressure on the price. And indeed, there's been a recent report from the World Gold Council suggesting that almost a quarter of central banks will be topping up their gold reserves next year. So we could see some additional support in 2024 as well.
Okay, thank you. Now, every year you bring investors your watchword. It's maturity this time. Talk us through it.
Yeah, it's an acronym. We're basically asking in 2024, will any recovery reach maturity, or could there be any further to go? So in terms of that acronym, what we do is highlight what we believe will be the major themes in the year to come. So in terms of 2024 maturity, we've got M&A and whether that might return, AI, which is clearly going to continue to be a theme, turbulence, which is one of the things you can guarantee in terms of general markets, the UK market, which is increasingly agreed that it's due a re-rating. Who knows when that will come? Recession, both in the US, will they achieve a soft landing, and will we get one in the UK? Inflation, will that finally be put to bed? Technology's Magnificent Seven, obviously they've driven a lot of the gains this year. Will that kind of strength continue? And finally, yields. And this isn't just about bond yields, which obviously have been easing of late, but dividend yields as well, which are, of course, part of the investor's armoury. So in a nutshell, those that acronym and maturity we think are going to be the major themes for next year.
Now, I'm not going to ask you to pick your favourite child here, but which of those letters in that acronym do you think are the most important?
I think there's probably two. The first one is M&A. Obviously, markets have been too volatile over the last 2 years for much M&A activity to be taking place, but there are some increasing signs that those which have really kept their powder dry, the private equity firms, even the sovereign wealth funds, are now starting to come back to the table. And of course, that could have implications for the UK market, which is particularly undervalued compared to its global peers. And I think the other one is probably that Magnificent Seven in the States. They've driven the vast majority of gains which we've seen in US markets. But lest we forget, although part of that has been down to the euphoria over the potential profitability of AI, there are many other technological advances being made to which those companies are exposed. So whilst the Nasdaq, for example, is up around 36% this year, that follows a fairly precipitous drop the year before. So it's not yet anywhere near the stage of either being near its record high or ridiculously expensive in terms of valuations.
Okay, Richard, thank you very much for that. That's all for today's Lunch Money. You can catch all the previous shows at thisismoney.co.uk/Lunch Money, or search for This Is Money on YouTube. And if you are watching there, please consider doing us a little favour and tap the like button and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. Join us for the next show on Thursday. Goodbye.